What's going on, boys? Quinn69 here. How you guys doing today? So as you can see here, I'm bringing you guys a new monk guide. This is for the Inners EP monk. This is the build I just used to push with. And just a quick disclaimer straight away, this is a solo only pushing build. So this is not designed for doing speeds or groups. This is for solo monk pushing to go as high as you possibly can. The build itself is completely reliant on exploding palm damage. So the entire kind of like gameplay functions around you trying to pull a lot of density together, making a big juicy pack, and then just exploding the crap out of it. And just another thing that I want to point out straight away, this is one of the most difficult builds I've played as a monk. Probably not the most. I'd probably say Serenity EP was probably a little bit harder than this. But in saying that, this is very close. There is no dead keys. So every single key on your, all your skills there, every single one is active. You have to use them deliberately and specifically. There is no like spam it on cooldown sort of thing. It's not like a will and barb where 4 keys are just being spammed and you just kind of hold one down. Every single key is pressed in a deliberate manner. And now let's talk about that. How does the build actually do damage? The whole point of this build is to blow things up on the cold COE rotation whilst having assimilation stacks up. So you'll see here, okay, this is a great example actually. You'll see here, let's go back actually like a tiny little bit here. So you can see here I'm at lightning COE right now. At this point here, the second you see lightning COE, okay, what you're going to be wanting to do is at this point, you're generally at lightning COE, you're going to be running around and you're just going to be grouping things up. Rise, this is ending, you're going to be like, alright, it's time to exploding palm. So you're going to go through and you're going to start applying EPs on everything. So you're going to see me, I should start spamming EP. So you see my little EP button, it's going ham, I'm like EP. And I'm trying to EP anything with low HP or any squishy monsters that I think might die. Okay? And then right as this physical COE comes up to cold, you can see my HP is dropping very low. I'm going to check before I press Mystic Ally on use, because the way Mystic Ally on use works, because we're using Intercept, we have 10 allies. When I right click this, it's going to set off 10 special abilities, right? So I'm going to get healed to full, it's going to send out a bunch of cold waves, it's going to make my spirit go back to full, it's going to send out 2 boulders that go ham, etc, etc. Okay, a lot of stuff happens, but we're wearing a special pair of braces. They're called Binding of the Lost, and it increases the damage of your Mystic Ally by a significant amount. But it has a requirement of you have to have cycloned the enemies in the last 5 seconds. So you're going to check that your cyclone has gone off. So at this point, if you haven't cycloned, you want to cyclone. And then cold COE's up. I'm going to make sure my assimilation was up there. So I would have started that assimilation. So you can see that that's a special Way of the 100 Fist rune. For every enemy hit with by assimilation on your 3rd hit, you get 5% damage increase. So I'm getting 21 times 5 damage increase. My cold COE is up, so I have the 3 times multiplier. My inner set is equipped, so I have a 6 times multiplier. Okay, my EPs are about to hit like a fucking truck. And that is what you've got to do. So you can see here, my cyclone's actually kind of sketched out there. My cyclone was dropping right there. Okay, and boom, they all explode. Can we see any good damage numbers there? Is that A3 million? It's actually pretty small damage. But yeah, that is how it works. Okay, so let me, I don't know, it might have been like a little bit too fast and a little bit too much information. But I highly suggest just watching the gameplay and trying to just pick up what's going down. So you can see here, let's go back a tiny little bit. We'll just go over one more rotation here. One more rotation. So you can see here, so I've got Lightning COE up at this point here. Lightning COE is up, so I should be EPing. So I'm EPing. Lightning COE. I know Physical's coming next. Physical's about to come up here. So physical, you basically, when it comes up to physical COE, at this point here, you're going to be wanting to start considering applying your assimilation stacks. So pretty much at about the halfway point, I should be assimilating. So here we go. Am I assimilating? Boom. My assimilation stacks just came up to 21. My Cyclone Strike debuff is still up. I might go for another Cyclone. What do you guys reckon? So I am going for another Cyclone there. So I went for the Cyclone, and then I've right-clicked my Mystic Ally on use. So they're all debuffed to taking more damage from your Mystic Allies. You've got your Assimilation stacks up, your Cold COEs up, and now you're right-clicking. Obviously, if I needed to, I would dash, but there's every single key being used right now. And I'm fighting elites, and I don't want to die, so I've pressed Desert Shroud there. And then the end result is this. This is how it works. Boom, everything just blows up and dies. You can quite easily one-shot blue elites and one-shot yellows. You gotta remember the gear I'm using right now, so this was actually a rank 1 NA push here, and the gear I'm using is extremely mediocre. It is very average. I could be hitting way harder and going way higher, but I've got casual as enchants, casual as gear, and what I'm trying to say is the build itself has a very high degree of there's a very high degree of, I don't know using skill, but like it's, if you do it correctly, you're gonna do a crap ton of damage and you're gonna do very well. If you do it incorrectly, it just doesn't work. Like if you muck up a single process there, if you don't have Assimilation up, or if you forgot to Cyclone Strike, or if you use Mystic Ally not during cold, or you don't apply EP on the correct targets, nothing will happen. You'll just sit there and nothing will die. So a lot of people will play this spec and be like, this is just crap. And that's because you're not doing it correctly. So that's what I'm trying to stress. Normally with a monk build, I won't go into the rotation in this kind of depth, but it is required. So just don't come complaining back to me when you say, this monk build sucks, it's not doing any damage. That's because you're not doing it correctly, boys. And I believe in you guys. Hopefully that's enough gameplay. If you want to see the full clear, you can go to my... I'll link it in the description below, and I'll link it up there as well, so you guys can click that, and that you can see this full 83 clear, if if you want to. But yeah, otherwise, that is how the build is played, and let's go over the gear, and let's go over the skills. As far as skills go, we are using Way of the 100 Fists Assimilation. So you can see here, each enemy hit with a third hit increases your damage by 5% for 5 seconds. Obviously, this scales really well with this build and the way in which it does damage. So we're trying to do a ton of damage in a very short window. So you get this up preemptively right before your COE is about to tick over, and then boom, you have like this crazy damage buff. I mean, you saw in that video we were getting more than 20 stacks. I've seen up to 40 stacks. I mean, the sky's the limit. If you can, get right in the middle of a bunch of monsters, you can get some crazy assimilation stacks. We're then using Mystic Ally, obviously because we are using the inner set. You can see the 6th set says gain 5 ruined Mystic Allies at all times, and the damage is blah blah blah, whatever. You get every single rune of your Mystic Ally, so it doesn't matter what rune you choose. There's no, I mean, you could just put Water Ally on there because then it would look nicer, but I mean, I just have mine on no rune. It's whatever. You get all the Mystic Allies, yeah, GGWP. We're then using Cyclone Strike Implosion. This is due to the fact that, Cyclone Strike is really good for the build, but you are wearing shoulder pads here. Cyclone Strike reduces your damage by up to 50% for 5 seconds. That's something I forgot to mention. You're generally want to keep this buff up the entire time you're playing, because if you let this drop, then you're going to die, especially in high GRs. And on top of that, you're also using Binding of the Lesser Gods. Enemies hit by your Cyclone Strike take 200% more damage from your Mystic Allies for 5 seconds. So that's why you can easily use this little timer here, because that timer there is for your shoulder pads. But that's what I use to see if I've got my Cyclone Strike up before I use my right click. Perfect. We're then using Exploding Palm Impending Doom. The reason we use this rune here is because Exploding Palm Impending Doom is just straight up overpowered. It does 6,305% damage. It's on the on-death explosion. It's way better than any of the other runes. It also lines up really well because the cold on use for Mystic Ally is the best on use in terms of AoE damage, so it's pretty sick. We're then using Dashing Strike, Blinding Speed. You can alternatively use Radiance depending on your breakpoint for Mystic Ally auto attacks. I don't really want to go over that right now because it's quite complicated. This can be a single target DPS, and it is a single target DPS boost. It makes your Stricken stack faster, and it also means your Mystic Allies attack faster. But I prefer to use Blinding Speed. 40% dodge is amazing. We're then using Epiphany, Desert Shroud for the 50% damage reduction. That is purely what we're using it for. The regen's okay and everything, but in high GRs, you're gonna die without this. This is the kind of, you will play around this ability. So you'll see, in some of my videos, or if you've been watching my stream, and when I'm playing this build, there's a lot of times where I will just be running around hurting because I cannot engage the monsters without this ability up. So you'll miss out on 2 entire COE rotations while you wait for this bad boy to come up, and then you use it and you get in there and you do your stuff and you make everything explode. We're then using Beacon to Yita, 20% cooldown reduction, really powerful. It's just like having 20% more CDR in your sheet. OP. CZ Initiative increases your single target by a ton. It means you can apply exploding palms a lot faster, and it also means you can assimilate faster. It's really powerful. We're then using Unity. Unity, so basically that increases your Mystic Ally damage by 5%, and then you get a 20% damage buff. And that's up the whole time because you have 10 allies and they're all on range mantra at all times. So you have, 20% additive damage. This is less effective on the actual Mystic Ally damage because you have, 100% Mystic Ally damage on your Diabo. And also, these braces here are that's not multiplicative damage, that's just additive damage. So this pretty much does nothing for your Mystic Allies. But what it does do, it means your EPs hit really hard. So this is the best thing. You can alternatively, if you want to be a god, change that out to Mythic Rhythm, because that is a 40% multiplier to exploding palm damage. Really powerful. It means you're going to have a lot less EPs out. It means you're going to have to be very accurate in what you apply your EPs on. And then on top of that, when you use the Mystic Ally on use, half the time it does not hit the target you're trying to hit. So it's, I don't know, Unity's generically going to be better. But in the dream scenario, I think Mythic Rhythm could beat it out. If you're hardcore, I would probably switch this talent out. I'd probably keep C's, and I would actually drop that from Needed Experience. We're then using Harmony, so you don't die. In the cube, we are using a Fist of Aztariq. This is a 4 times multiplier for Exploding Palm. They buffed this from 100%. Due to the fact that they nerfed some Wuko EP sets, and there's no now a specialized EP build anymore. You can kind of just use Inner's EP and then Legacy of Nightmares EP, and this is to do with that. Without this, the build just doesn't work. We're then using a Binding of the Lesser Gods. So each enemy hit by a Cyclone Strike takes 200% more damage from your Mystic Allies for 5 seconds. This is an additive damage boost. It is not a multiplier. If it was, it'd be even stronger. And obviously you can switch this out, so I'm wearing Gundo gear braces. You can have Binding on your character and Gundo in the cube. Just the same with Convention of Elements, and we've been over this and how this works. You can have this on your character, or you can have a Unity, vice versa. You can switch Unity with COE. To be honest, I would probably prefer to have a crit cooldown COE than I would a crit elite damage Unity. Because you obviously cannot get crit cooldown unities just because they always roll with elite damage. As far as your legendary gems go, we're using Esoteric Alteration, gain 55% non-physical damage reduction. This allows you to survive Rift Guardians. This allows you to survive the actual Rift. If you're a complete baller or you're doing lower GRs, you could potentially swap this out. But yeah, this is pretty damn mandatory. The secondary is obviously really helpful, so when you're, below half life, your cold, fire, lightning, poison, and arcane resistance increased by 75%. OP. We're then using Bane of the Stricken. If you haven't seen this build kill a boss before, it's horribly slow, unless you get, like, Saxtress or Hamlin. It is horribly slow, and this enables you to actually kill Rift Guardians. Without this gem, the build does not work for solo pushing. We are then using Bane of the Trapped, 42% multiplier, the secondary procs the primary, and on top of that, you have the Cold Mystic Ally rune, so the Water Mystic Ally, and that imbues your attacks to actually slow enemies. So whenever you attack anything, and on top of that, you're using, there's tons of slows. So Bane of the Trapped is procced like all the time. Okay, and as far as gear goes, we are using Crudus Boots. Obviously, this is mandatory. Mystic Ally summons 2 Mystic Allies that fight by your side. So you go from 5 Mystic Allies at a 250% multiplier to 10 Mystic Allies with a 500% multiplier. So this literally doubles your damage output. And on top of that, it doubles all of the secondary buffs. OP. We're then using Inner's Diabo. So Inner's Diabo, okay, it rolls with up to 100% Mystic Ally damage that is additive. And it's a 2-handed Diabo, so it's slow, so it means your EPs hit really hard. And on top of that, it's a part of the Inner's set. So this is a key piece to the build. We're then using Inner's Pants, Inner's Belt, in his chest, in his gloves, and in his helmet. So that's just to complete the inner set. We've got Lepic to get a little soccer, whatever the hell these things are. Okay, Cyclone Strike reduces your damage by up to 50% for 5 seconds. This is another damage reduction multiplier. It scales really well. So you just take, you can see my toughness just doubles the second I hit this. It's really, really, really strong. We are then using, this is something I didn't mention actually, the Compass Rose and the Traveler's Pledge. Okay, so this combo, I mean, this isn't a lot of builds now. It's probably the most overpowered new set that they've added to the game. So, if you guys don't know how this works, I'll quickly go over it. Basically, when you're standing still, it doubles your damage. When you're moving around, it'll reduce your damage by up to half. So it's just like having a pair of shoulders on. So you can see, as I'm running around, now I'm at 50% damage reduction. So it's like I'm pressing the, it's like having these shoulders buff active. And then when I stand still, it'll progressively work back, and it'll be like this. So your damage reduction goes down, and we're going up, and now we're at full damage buff. And then if I was to start running again, it would do the opposite. So now it's going back the other way. And this is something you want to be conscious about. It's actually really good for this build. You actually run around herding monsters. And, when you're herding, you don't want to be doing damage anyway. You're just trying to gather the monsters up. And then you actually get that damage reduction. So it has a really nice synergy with the build. And on top of that, then when you go down to start applying your EPs, so you're in there applying your EPs, and then you're doing your assimilation, you can see, then you get damage buff up. So that also is but you can be conscious and aware about that. And I am in the GRs, I just forgot to talk about it. As far as your bracelets go, I'm using Gundo gears. Obviously, as I said, you can swap those out. And just like Unity, you can swap this out. So to make Unity function, if you guys don't know, we'll just go over this just in case someone doesn't. You have to have a Unity on your follower because it splits the damage between you and your follower. Then you have your follower cannot die, so he doesn't take any damage. And that means you get a net result of 50% damage reduction. As far as Paragons go, just cap out your movement speed. So, I don't have any movement speed on my boots. So, I'm going full to 25% movement speed. If I had, like, say, 10 movement speed on my boots, I would then put 15 in my Paragon, because you can only have a maximum of 25 passive movement speed. And then you go the rest in dexterity. As far as offense goes, cooldown reduction, crit hit damage, then crit chance, then attack speed. As far as survivability goes, all res, armor, life percent, life regen. As far as utility goes, area damage, resource cost reduction, life on hit, and then gold fine, obviously. Thing worth noting, the word on the street is, because Gundo gear technically applies a skill, but it's applied through an item. So this could be classed as a bug, but I don't think it really is. I mean, we know item damage doesn't scale with area damage. So the word on the street is, Gundo gear does not scale with area damage. So area damage is not that attractive of a stat, unfortunately, for this particular build. There's not too, it's not that bad, but just be careful when you're weighing up those stat weights. Don't think, oh, area damage is OP, because it is OP, but unfortunately, apparently Gundo gear is not scaling with area damage, so it makes me sad. I cry every time. But otherwise, that is everything on my notepad. Hopefully I've covered everything. Obviously, I am going to have a written guide down below, like usual. If you want to, you can check that out. But otherwise, that is it. Enjoy this build. Try not to blow your brains out when you're playing it, because it can be very frustrating. Just, give it a few days, try it out, and then once you kind of learn how to do it, you're going to see that it's actually extremely effective. I mean, the difference between day 1 of me playing this build and day 2 of playing the build is night and day, honestly. It just takes a little bit to get warm, just to warm up to that bad boy. But otherwise, guys, peace the hell out. Have a good day. Hopefully you enjoyed the guide. If you haven't already, subscribe. Oh god, that's pretty sellout. Oh god.